I am Jim Collison and live from Omaha, Nebraska, and the Gallup office is in Singapore. This is Gallup's Call to Coach, recorded on April 14th, 2015. Call to Coach is a resource for those who want to help others discover and use their strengths. We have Gallup experts and independent strengths coaches share tactics, insights, and strategies to help coaches maximize the talent of individuals, teams, and organizations around the world. If you have questions during the cast, we do have a live chat room that's available for you right below the main video window. Many of you will catch this on the recorded version, however. And if you have questions during that, just shoot us an email. You can send us those questions to coaching@gallup.com. If you also have questions on custom strengths coaching solutions for small, medium, or large organizations, we'd like to hear from you as well. Again, send us that email, coaching@gallup.com. There's also a contact form right there on the page if you're on the coach's blog. Just to the right, look down, you'll see a contact form, and you can use that as well. Don't forget to visit the Gallup Strength Center. That's just gallupstrengthcenter.com for all your coaching resources and training needs. And you can also catch the video, both streaming and now downloadable audio and video, actually, is available for you for offline listening. If you want to capture it in the car or on a train or in the plane, you can get that done. Again, all that is available for you over at coaching.gallup.com. Saurav Bhatri is our host today. He works as a strengths evangelist in Singapore. And Saurav, great to see you for another Call to Coach, and welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Jim, and a warm welcome to all people logged in live from around the world. From warm Singapore, and today we start out another journey of Call to Coach for Singapore with a very special guest called Bhavani Prakash, and we are privileged to have her on our show today. She's a speaker, trainer, and an executive coach. She's also a TEDx speaker and was nominated as Sony TV IWA Woman of the Year 2014. So really, excited to have her come on our show today. She's left a career in finance. All her life she's been working in the finance industry, and then she started a non-profit website called Eco Walk the Talk, which was a finalist in the Singapore Environment Council's Asia Journalism Awards in 2012. She's also the founder of Green Collar Asia, a training organization that brings in fields of sustainability and CSR and strength-based leadership in organization. She's also a senior trainer, a consultant with the Potential Project, a global organization dedicated to spreading mindfulness at work. Without further ado, Bhavani, thank you so much for coming on the show. We'd love to hear your strengths journey. It's a very interesting story that you were sharing with us during the course and recently as well. So, let's start off by hearing, how did you got introduced to strengths, and maybe even introducing your strengths top 5 as well.
Thank you very much. First of all, lovely to see you, Jim, and Saurav, thank you for having me in the program. It's a pleasure to be here. My strengths journey has been really, really fascinating. As you mentioned before, I started off my career in finance, and of course I was paid well. I did well, I got all the recognition I wanted, but I can't say I was particularly excited in my job. And I couldn't put my finger as to why that was, because I was doing well. And to cut a long story short, when I came to Singapore, and it took a few years of living in Singapore, and I did many things in the interim, but eventually in 2008, I had a massive wake-up call to the environmental crisis that was happening in the world, and I felt I had to do something about it. And I became a speaker, and I started writing and just raising awareness about various environmental issues. And as a speaker, trainer, and coach, I kind of gravitated towards organizations that were concerned and wanted to do something about their environmental and social impact. And I gravitated towards leaders who wanted to make a difference in their corporate social responsibility. So this kind of new work really, really energized me. I started waking. I couldn't wait to get out of bed in the morning, and I could hardly sleep at night because I was so energized in this work. And I knew I'd found my passion and purpose in life, but I knew there was something else, and I just couldn't figure out what it was. Eventually it led me to strengths, and I'll come to that in greater detail. But I want to say that about a year before I took my Strengths Finder, I had crafted out my personal mission statement, and when I eventually did the Strengths Finder, and I mapped my top 5 strengths. In fact, I could map all the way up to the top 12 dominant themes onto my mission statement. And I'd love to share that with you if you're interested. So my mission statement reads like this. My top 5 strengths are positivity, strategic, maximizer, woo, and futuristic. So my mission statement comes in 4 lines, and I can map 3 of my strengths into each of the 4 lines, so 3 times 4, 12. So the first line is, to leave a world that's better than the one I have inherited. So that's the strategic, futuristic, and responsibility. By creating joy and well-being for people, the planet, and all its species in a mindful and compassionate way. So you could hear connectedness, belief, the core values, and developer, because I want to develop people and the planet. To accomplish this by taking leadership through personal action, and there my self-assurance, and also learner and achiever, because I think leadership is not just about self-assurance, but it's about learning and listening and taking action, which is the achiever there. And the 4th line, by communicating and engaging with as many people as possible for positive change. And there you can see the woo, the maximizer, and positivity. And I'm sharing this not to, share my fancy mission statement and brag about that. No, it's just to share that that I found why I was so energetic, because I could see that I was using not just my top 5, but my dominant 12 almost on a daily basis when I look at the mission statement and carry out my day. And that's where I got the energy from. And previously in my finance career, here I was doing looking at past-oriented data, doing a lot of analytical stuff, which wasn't energizing. And this isn't to say that all finance jobs are past-oriented. You have very strategic and futuristic finance jobs, but not the one I was doing. And I'm not saying that all finance people find their jobs boring either, because those who love context and those who love that kind of data and immersion into data would really get energized by their jobs. But it was just not for me. And I would really wish that more people would look into careers and jobs where they could use their strengths on a daily basis. And how I came to strengths was, so those of you in the strengths community know that the raw form of positivity manifests itself as having a very idealistic and Pollyannish view of the world. And Jim, I think you have positivity in your top 5. This might resonate with you. And of course, if you heard my mission statement, you might think that too, because it's a very idealistic picture. But I think I've matured over a period of time to taking practical action. One of the practical steps I took was, hey, if I have to inspire people towards positive change, I really have to understand more about human behavior. And so early on, I took on quite a few accreditations, especially in positive psychology, and that led me to the book by Tom Rath on strengths-based leadership. And I found that book fascinating. Here were case studies of so many leaders, and each of them came with different top 5 strengths. They didn't come out of a cookie cutter, so there was no ideal profile for a leader. It was they came with different strengths, different skill, different abilities on the table, and still they had successful outcomes. And that kind of resonated with what I intuitively understood about people, that we can all be very unique, and we all have our own talents and strengths, and we can all make our unique contribution to the world. And so, I looked up the Strengths website, and I found that the coaching program was going, and that's how I came to the breakfast session with Saurav and Purva, and I just signed up for the course, and I said, wow, I think this is the right thing for me. That's probably the connectedness showing there, which is my 6th strength. And it was really a pleasure to be in the very first accreditation program, be one of the first 50 in Asia, right? So yeah, so that's my strengths journey.
Fantastic. So making a switch from financial economics from University of London to behavioral economics with Gallup. So let me kind of understand how have you been incorporating behavioral economics, Strengths Finder with sustainability and CSR and your training practice that you currently do.
Yes, I definitely incorporate all of them because for me the ultimate aim is to shift organizations to making a positive impact on society and the environment. So a lot of the work that I do is with teams, and of course I get the buy-in from leaders, and I tend to work with teams where leaders get the bigger picture in terms of how can we improve our social and environmental impact in our pursuit of economic goals. So in teams, so I typically get them to map what they are expecting, and then in the next 1 to 3 years, it's probably the strategic and futuristic in me. What are their goals for the next 1 to 3 years, and then look at their strengths and how they can map their strengths into what they want to achieve for the team. But there's also a very critical piece. The one question that I ask repeatedly is, what are your goals in service of? So what are your goals in service of? And sometimes I may get the reply, yeah, we need to get a 20% increase in turnover for our shareholders. And I'd say, that's a very blasé response in this era and age, because this is an age where we need to go beyond just looking at shareholder returns. We need to look at all the stakeholders that we're engaging with, and how does this affect our supply chain? How does it affect our customers' well-being? How does it affect societal well-being and the community and the environment? And I get them to map, what these goals mean for the improvement of that well-being of whichever stakeholders that they're considering. And then suddenly it lifts the energy, because they can see that they're there not just to achieve an economic goal, but they're there to achieve a much higher purpose. And I call this moving from the me space of, what's in it for me, what's in it for my shareholders, and moving to a we space, what is it for our collective well-being. And I love to quote the example of our the late first Prime Minister of Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew, who passed away last month. And he was a visionary, and I think, used his strengths tremendously well. And he's responsible for bringing up this tiny fishing village over a 30-40-year period to a thriving metropolis and a thriving economy. And one of his former private secretaries, Heng Swee-Huat, remembers that Lee Kuan Yew's favorite question, whenever he was shown any development projects, was, so what does this mean for Singapore? So what does it mean for Singapore? So that's a classic example of a political leader who's not just thinking about, what can I do for myself, but what does this mean for the nation as a whole? So this is a lovely question that I really like to play with. What do our strengths mean? I bring this to teams very often. What do our strengths mean for our families? What do our strengths mean for the organization or the team? What does it mean for the community? What does it mean for society? What does it mean for world peace? What do our strengths mean for the entire planet? What do our strengths mean for future generations? And that's how I like to inspire teams to move from that me to we space.
I love the connectedness, how you're connecting, strengths of individuals to teams, to organizations, to countries, to the world. So fantastic. We'd love to hear a particular example of maybe a team that you may have worked with, or an individual, where you actually help them connect the dots between their teams and their mission, or with their organization. How did you help them create those insights?
Yeah, so this is a team that I worked with, very high-performing team, and I impacted them in a slightly different way. So here was a team where very high on executing, when you look at the 4 domains of strengths, very high on strategic thinking, very high on executing, quite low when you compare the team grid, quite low on influencing and relationship building. So, I just kind of said, what's working well? They said, yeah, we're able to set our goals clearly, we're able to map our direction, and we work very hard. And then I said, what are your challenges? They said, we feel really burnt out in the process. And I said, why do you think that is? And then they looked at their team grid, and I said, yeah, there are possibly not enough people or enough strengths manifesting in the influencing and relationship building areas, and we're probably not celebrating our milestones enough. And so it's, I again, when I do my facilitations, I get the answers out of the group. I said, okay, then what do you think you can do to celebrate more? And so they came up with a solution in terms of identifying people in the team who could help them kind of celebrate, and who are great at organizing little parties. And so they were able to kind of do a thermostatic break to that very, very task-oriented focus, and celebrate their milestones and appreciate each other. And as a result of which, after a few months, found that they were not as burnt out as before. So I think this is a great example of how just understanding the team grid and the dynamics can really help the overall well-being of the team. So we look at collective well-being, and this is how I map the strengths to how everybody is in terms of how they feel about being in that team and how they feel about working in that team.
Great. A lot of questions that at times I've heard questions around how do you introduce the concept to teams or to individuals? So what is your style of rolling it out within an organization? Do you start with the team? Do you start with the manager? Do you start with the the senior leadership team? How do you introduce the concept of strengths within an organization?
Definitely with the top leaders. I think that's really important to get the buy-in. I mean, sometimes I do get invited to do a workshop for middle-level managers, and it's a nice way to introduce that, and it might get the top managers' attention that way. So I do think there is value in that. But really, if you're looking at a culture change intervention for strengths, and that's how I see this program as, especially for teams, are we changing the culture of the organization to moving away from a problem-oriented culture to a solution of strengths-oriented culture? For that, top management is really, really important. Their buy-in is very critical. So when I've got to coach the top leaders and they get it and they see the value in this, then it makes so much more sense and much easier to roll it out. Not that there are no challenges, just because there's top management buy-in doesn't mean that everybody's going to just come on board. And I have a strategy around that, which I call ABC. So C, I would say, are the detractors. There are usually a few who are very loud and who are very cynical. They're very skeptical about things. So the way I handle them is really by attending to what their concerns are and their needs are, not to resist them, because by resisting them and pushing them away, you're just giving them more energy. So it's really understand where their concerns are coming from and to share the science behind this. And of course, Gallup is great on the science, and to really validate their concerns. So that's really important. But again, not focus so much energy that you miss the rest of the group, who are the real kind of influencers. So that's the C. The A's are usually the majority, who get strengths, who are excited about it, who really want to explore what this means for themselves, their own lives, and for the work environment. And when they see the top management really interested in this, the excitement goes up. So pay a lot of attention to the A's. And the B's are the people who are kind of sitting on the fence. They're kind of neutral. They're watching the A's. They're watching the C's. And then when they see the energy levels go up, and they see that there's a sustainability element in this, in terms of, hey, top management is serious about sustaining this culture change into the future, then they shift to this side of the fence. So that's how I tend to bring it into teams.
Fantastic. Also, how do you follow through so that it becomes sustainable within the organization or the team?
There's a lot of pre-work that I do. I just don't underestimate the amount of pre-preparation that I do in terms of physically sitting down with leaders, and I almost get a pre-agreement from the leaders and say that, look, I'm going to be facilitating in the session, the team building exercise. I'm going to facilitate a session where I'm going to get the team to brainstorm on how they can make this culture change sustainable. So the ideas aren't coming from me, they're coming from the team. And I would like you as leaders to support this, and I need your agreement that you're going to support the ideas that are going to come out of the program. And I want you to be there to listen in and to promise that, hey, this is going to be implemented after the program or the team building. So there's a lot of kind of canvassing and pre-agreement that I get before I even start the actual workshop or the team building.
Perfect. We'd love to hear one case story, Bhavani, where you saw that maybe you got an insight out of it, or you saw an individual got an insight out of it, and what sort of activities did you do to sustain it? Any tips and ideas that you have for coaches listening in?
Let me move to an individual. She was an SME owner. She is an SME owner, very successful entrepreneur. And one of the things that I do on my one-on-one coaching is of course, introduce strengths, the vocabulary, and so on. And then my favorite question is, in your top 5 or top 10, what are the strengths you're overusing? And what are the ones you're underutilizing? So here was a lady who had maximizer and activator in her top 5. And she was very frustrated because she had a lot of projects that she wanted to do, but most of her time was taken up by this one mega event that her company organized during the year. And so when I asked the question, what strength are you overutilizing? She said, oh, I get it. I'm overusing my maximizer because I'm such a perfectionist that I have to get into every nitty-gritty detail of that mega event that I organize. And I said, do you have a team of people helping you? She said, yes, I do. I said, why don't you let them do more? And she said, yeah, I should, but I'm not, because I want to make sure that everything is perfectly executed. So the next question I asked is, what then? How much percentage of perfection are you prepared to let go in the organization of that event and still consider yourself successful? And she came up with a percentage that resonated with her. And I said, okay, what does letting go of that percentage of perfection mean for you in terms of what you can do for the projects that you've been wanting to start? And she said, that's huge. It would free me so much time for the rest of the projects. And you could see that because she was underutilizing her activator, and that's why she was so frustrated. She wanted to be starting all these new things, and they had stalled. So really, after the coaching session, that was a huge aha for her, because she was able to let go of managing the finer points of that event, and she could really work on these projects which really helped take her business to the next level. So that was a great insight for her, and many insights that come out of discussing the top themes, and the pairing of the themes bring a lot of revelation. There's another example I'd love to share in terms of theme contrasts, and this has helped me in my own life with my daughter. Now, my top strength is positivity, and her top strength is the total contrast, which is deliberative. And if you know about, and the coaches here who have deliberative know about deliberative, so deliberative people really like to take time to think about things and to think from various perspectives and angles. They look for problems and risks, and they want to be sure that all these are taken care of. till they come up with a solution, or so typically people would jump to conclusions about them, and myself included. I'd be very judgmental about my daughter. She's taking too much time to think, and why is she overthinking things? Why is she so problem oriented? Why can't she let go of thinking about risks and just see the positive side of things? That was my framing, you see. So it was only after I did the strengths-based accreditation, became a coach, that I could really, really begin to appreciate, hey, this is not a weakness. This is her. This is her strength. And, just celebrate and enjoy the fact that she likes to think of take her time to think through things and anticipate problems. It's not a problem that she's anticipating problem. That's a strength. And recently she came up with a very clear demonstration of how this was a real strength, a breakthrough realization for her. Because the fact that she was deliberative, she was actually comparing herself with so many people around her who are who talk before thinking. And it's a culture, our society encourages people who are very talkative and who just jump to say things all the time, and she just can't be like that. So here was a project that she did, and the entire class was totally muddled up with the project. They just couldn't get it. And for her group presentation, she was probably the only one who could really think through very clearly various dimensions. She could link the survey, because of her patience, she could link the survey back to the thesis. And they did a brilliant presentation, and the professor actually singled out their presentation to be really outstanding. And finally, she saw how she was displaying her deliberative and how much value it brought to the table. I think for me, it was a great aha moment we are taught to love all 34 themes, but I couldn't say I could earlier. But now I do. I really think every single theme has a beauty and something to appreciate around it. And I think it's really helped the relationship with my daughter, because previously we were like two rough stones and rubbing against each other and causing a lot of friction and tension. And now we've become a lot more polished. I've taken on her ability to see more risk, which has matured my raw positivity, and she's taken on a little bit of my ability to frame things in a positive way, which has polished her and made her well-rounded as well.
Wow, what a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that, Bhavani. And you made such an interesting point, an important point, that, as human beings, the biggest reasons why conflicts happen or misunderstandings happen is because we don't understand each other. And, strengths, where I've seen the value of it is also that it gives us a common language to start understanding each other. And it makes so much sense, when you start saying deliberative, and great, it's risks, it's not necessarily something wrong with it. It's actually, you could partner with that individual to help, get the best out of yourself as well. So thank you for sharing.
And I love to use the metaphor of a rainforest. And I think I wrote that in my first coaching blog as well. I think if we can develop strengths-based human beings as part of a rainforest-like ecosystem. So in a rainforest, you have a variety of species which are interdependent. And each species comes with its own unique strengths and talents. And the reason the entire ecosystem thrives is not because everybody is doing the same thing in a particular way. It's because each species adds to that diversity. And I think if this is what the strengths-based movement can bring, we can be our own unique selves and add to that unique interdependent ecosystem.
Fantastic. Blooming the ecosystem together.
Yes.
Thank you. Jim, do you have any questions from your end?
Yeah, I've got one question. It kind of comes from the chat room, and let me ask you this. So this person says, working with a coach to determine which of my staff to promote to manage people. This is not going to be an easy question, by the way, so put your thinking cap on. You'll need this one. Of the great people managers what are their top 5 strengths? We get this question a lot when people talked about, can you help me identify the right person based on their strengths? Any combination that you feel or think are more effective than others, trying to learn more about the possibilities. Sorry, let me actually throw that to you, and then maybe you can toss that over. How do we, when we approach those kinds of situations, how do we approach those?
And that's a great point of it, right? And that's what we always talk about. That Don Clifton's research initially around strengths, has 2 branches. One focuses on if you can do a particular job or not, which looks at the selection piece of it, right? And the second element is how you do the job of ours, which focuses on the development piece. Strength Finder is part of that development piece. It would not tell you that if you can do a particular role or not, right? Think of this way, right? If you know to have another individual, the same top 5 as yours, you need to find a person in 1 in 33 million. Now, if you go about hunting people like yourself, people like us recruiters, we'll go crazy finding that one person in 33 million, just like you, right? So, it's statistically impossible to find those people, to hire them based on StrengthsFinder. There's no statistical correlation right now that we have that if you have a particular profile, you'll be successful as a CEO or as a salesperson. We don't have those statistics in answer yet, right? And that's why we say that we have separate tools at Gallup that we can help identify what person could be a great fit into a particular role based on the research that we would do in your organization. So when we bring a person, that's when strengths, identifying the strengths and then putting the right roles will help you develop them as individuals by knowing how they wire in their brains through this science that we've developed. So that's what I would say, short answer is that use strengths to develop people, get the best out of them, and not for selection. And each person has a potential to get the best out of them. Don't change them, make them more of who they already are. Bhavani?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. If I go back to my finance career, not all finance roles are the same. If you happen to have a finance role that is strategic and futuristic and gets me to connect with a lot of people, it's possible that I may have been very energetic. So you can't typecast a particular job into this. But the important thing is to find out if the person has the opportunity to use his or her top 5 strengths on a daily basis in that role. So if you can, as a leader, create those opportunities to help the person apply those strengths on a daily basis, they're going to be so much more engaged. So that's my take on it. I don't think there's any typical profile, and I refer to the book by Tom Rath as well called Strengths-Based Leadership, and I'm so glad there isn't a typical profile for a leader. You can come with any top 5 strengths. The important thing is how do you apply those strengths, and how do you polish your raw form. Are you looking from the balcony or from the basement of your strengths? So that's really, really important.
One of the privileges I have here in Omaha, working for Gallup, is we have a go-to team, a management team. There's 12 of us, and we all have different strengths, and so we rely on each other for those differences. There are times when certain jobs need to get done, we kind of take a look at our strength set, and we kind of know, okay, let's point these people in these directions, or let's partner this group up to get these things done. So we're all managers. We all manage people, and so it's just a great, especially in teams. I think it's the key that unlocks the door to success with a bunch of managers is everyone knowing what they're good at and what they're not good at. So Ryan asked another question in chat. He said maybe Bhavani, you could talk a little bit about the challenges you encountered when you first made the shift out of finance. And maybe how did you use your strengths how did you use your top 5 or 12 or so to overcome some of those issues?
Yeah, I mean, it was quite a big move, right? I mean, I'd all my life thought that I wanted to be a very successful banker. And I was working in a different industry. I was working in the oil field services sector and aviation training, so different industry. And my goal was come to Singapore, great financial center, get into banking, and I'm going to be super happy. And but there's something you just listen to So what happened over the years when I came to Singapore in 2008, and I had the wake-up call in 2003, and I had the wake-up call in 2008. So in between the 6 years, I had one eye looking towards banking and the other foot towards environment. And there came a point where, you know, and it was, to share the specific story, I was at this seminar and we did this exercise where we had to visualize ourselves end of our life and look back at our life and regret the things we didn't do. And at that point of time, we have one life, and it became crystal clear to me. I just wanted to be able to spend the rest of my life doing things that were absolutely important for the future of my children, my grandchildren, and the world. And once you've seen that, your brain kind of reconfigures itself, I think. And I could never go back to the old way of thinking. So it was challenging. I mean, Singapore is a very expensive place. So, I've always had temptations to put in a job application. I've done this many times. I would almost send my resumes to companies and say, hey, maybe I should get a full-time job. It's really a struggle to have this, speaker, trainer, coach hat. You're doing so many things at the same time, as well as all the advocacy work. And then you want this regular income coming in. And then something would stop me when I wanted to hit the send button. And I'm glad, because I know if I went back to a regular job, I could never find that energy and joy that I find now when I'm doing what I'm passionate about, and I'm using my strengths on a daily basis. So I don't know if that helps answer your question.
Yeah,
but that's how I've overcome it.
I think it does. It's a great answer. Saurav, I'll throw it back to you as we kind of bring this in for landing. Oh, Saurav, I'm sorry, you're muted. One sec, if you could unmute for me.
Just a quick note on that, we do have our courses coming up. So in case you're interested to learn about the strength-based development philosophy, connect with our coaches locally as well as internationally. We have our Gallup's Accelerated Strengths Coaching course. Actually, we have one coming up next week in Singapore from 20 till 24th of April, and the one in June from 8 till the 12th. We've also launched our high performance management program. The inaugural one was launched in March, hugely successful. The next one is coming up end of June and July. So you can log on to our website, Gallup-Strengthscenter.com, to learn more about our courses. You can also view our details on coaching.gallup.com. Jim, back to you.
Bhavani, thank you for taking the time this morning, to be a part of what we do. It's great to see you again. I got to interview you a year and some change. Great to catch up on your stories. It's always good to spend time with the coaches, and so thanks for taking a few minutes to come in today and interview with us. I appreciate it.
An absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
You bet. I will remind everyone to take full advantages of all the resources we have available at the Gallup Strengths Center. Just head over to Gallup-Strengthscenter.com. If you have questions or comments and you'd like to email those to us, we'll take those coaching@gallup.com. You can also catch the recorded audio and video of this show and all the past ones. We've got a ton of past ones. If you're just catching this for the first time and you're like, man, I need more of this goodness, just head over to our YouTube page. Actually, the best thing to do is go to our coaches blog. So go to coaching.gallup.com, and we've got all the links to our Facebook group and YouTube page. Plenty of ways to connect with us. Lots of resources available for you, as well as answers to any questions that you might have. Those are all available on our coaches blog. Speaking of the coaches blog, while you're there, take a look at the meetup page. There is a meetup group. Alex Wong is leading that there in Singapore, and they're getting together pretty often. I'm getting a little jealous watching them on Facebook because they got some pretty sweet meetups going on in Singapore. So
he's doing a great job.
Yeah, Alex is doing a great job indeed, and so Alex, we appreciate that. In fact, actually, Ryan is out in chat. He's going to be joining Saurav. He's joining you guys next week, so he's pretty excited about coming out and being a part of that as well. All kinds of things going on around that. We have new Android and iPhone options for you. If you haven't taken StrengthsFinder or you want to remember what your top 5 are, just download that StrengthsFinder app. Either an iPhone or the Android store, just search StrengthsFinder. It'll bring that up for you. It's free. Within 5 minutes you're in, and you can get your top 5. I encourage everybody to take a screenshot, right? I think it's like power button and some other button, and it takes a screenshot. Make that your lock screen, and you'll never forget what your top 5. The average person checks their phones 63 times a day. That's a fact. You'll never forget your top 5 if you have it as part of your lock screen. We want to thank everyone for joining us today. And if you enjoyed it, please share it. We encourage you to let others know, and we look forward to the next Call to Coach, especially in Singapore. And with that, we'll say goodbye, everybody.